everyone, my name is Lucy Wangari. I am also known as the Onion Doctor. I run a startup called Onion Doctor, and today, just as my name suggests, I will be showing you the A to Z of onion production. Welcome to our farm, and as it is the norm, when we are talking about production, we have to start with land preparation. And in land preparation, when we are talking about commercial production, we have to know what our soils say, because that's the bank statement that we are going to use to finance ourselves. So after I get my soil test results, I'm able to know what I'm supposed to do. Do I add manure to my soil? Do I add gypsum to my soil? Do I just use it as it is? And so right now you're finding me in the process of land preparation, and we are going to start with making beds. These beds that we are going to make here, we will raise them for several reasons that I will explain as we go. So come with me as we do that. The reason as to why tunatengeneza beds zetu hivi, we want them 1 meter wide, sababu we are using drip irrigation system. Remember, we are farming in the arid and semi-arid regions, so we have to factor in water. We are having a 1 meter bed width so that we can be able to have more population of our onions. After shamba iko hivi flat, what we call a raised bed is that tutaitoa hivi, tuiraise, ndo hata kukinyesha, shamba letu lisikuwe na a lot of issues. So as we start to raise our beds, we leave a small path in between. Hii ndio unatembelea wakati unafanya shughuli zako shambani, spraying, weeding, or the general checking of the soil. So let us do the raised beds. As we're doing this, you will notice at the end of the day, tunataka ku raise bed yetu at a length of about 20 centimeters from the ground. Sababu if we do anything above that, shamba letu maji itatoka kwa beds, irudi hapa katikati. That is what we call drainage in the soil. So as we do this, you'll notice it's been raining quite a bit here, but because of having the beds raised, kitunguu yetu haidrown ndani ya maji. So even hivyo tunafanya, hiyo barabara tunaacha hivyo, easy kamba tunazitumia sababu OCD ya shambani. We want to see our bed running straight from start to end. And as we do this, the next step, definitely, if a soil test said add manure, you add manure. If it didn't say that, said add gypsum, you add gypsum. Whatever the soil test says, that is what you do after that. So once we do this, after that, once we are able to do the raking and we have the uniformity here, we are then now going to go to the drip irrigation, where we are going to pull the drip lines. And as I said, the drip lines zinatusaidia sana wakati wa irrigation, uniformity of the beds. So as we said, the reason as to why we are having these raised beds is to help us, number one, with the aeration of the soil, the infiltration of the water, and most importantly, it's easier to manage your onions once they are raised up. In an effort of raising the beds, hapa kumenyesha jana sana, so we are not able to really raise them well, and this is black cotton soil. But the idea is that you're supposed to raise it about 20 centimeters high. When I say raised, I mean from hapa nimesimama hadi hapa hii. Hapa bed inaanza, this distance should be about 15 to 20 centimeters. Alafu sasa unakuja unalainisha kwa 1 meter. Hii inatusaidia ikikuja wakati wa kulay the drip lines. So assumption is that hii tumetengeneza tumelainisha, lakini mchanga venye kumenyesha saizi, we are not able to really do the raking and flatten the soil. So after we are done with our beds, the next thing that we are going to do is lay the drip lines. Here I'm saying laying the drip lines because you already have set up the irrigation system before. But if you haven't, this is where you call an irrigation expert to help you in setting up of the drip lines. Okay, so the reason as to why we usually have either 3 or 4 or 2 drip lines per bed. Kuna some crops that the spacing from one crop to the next is big, that we used to fold. But for kitunguu, tunaweza tumia 3 ama 4. The width of the bed is what will make you decide whether to use 3 or 4. At the end of the day, when you have 4, you have more population of the plants, which will result to more yield. Unajua kitunguu is a game of numbers. The number you put in is what you get out, because they don't multiply to fruits. It's one onion, one seedling for one bulb. So the reason as to why you should choose to do 2, 3, or 4 is for that. But also we are going to show you how we increase our population in the farm even when we use 2 or 3 drip lines, because sometimes you may not be farming the onions. Inaweza kuwa unafanya onion for crop rotation. So we are going to show you how we do that. Remember I mentioned, if you don't have this irrigation setup, the cost for 1 acre is around 165,000. So you can budget for it and have it. And believe you me, this drip irrigation enables you to double the yields as compared to other irrigation systems. These ones is where tunafungulia maji per block ama tunafunga. We call these gate valves. So unaweza fungulia maji ama ufunge. Lakini because it's rained yesterday, we don't have water in the tank. We did not see the need of pumping. So after the pipe is in the system, we usually take it off. This is called a takeoff. This is a starter. And now there's a ball cork. Alafu this itself is what we call the drip tape. So when I mentioned the 165,000, it was for the drip system itself, plus all the other accessories. Hii ndio inajulikana sana, inaitwa drip tape. So when you're looking at kuchagua ile drip tape mzuri ya kupanda kitunguu, I will always recommend you go for the 15 centimeters a meter. A meter ni yaka kashimo katikati ya drip hole moja na nyingine. So hii shimo ikiwa 15 centimeters inakusaidia unapanda vitunguu vinne katikati yake, which makes you get better population. Kuna other drip lines za 20 centimeters, zingine za 30 centimeters, na kuna zingine pia za 45 centimeters. So depending on the crop, you can be able to select the drip line or the drip tape that you want to use for your system. Ours is 15 centimeters because onion is our main crop. Tukifanya rotation, hizo vitu zingine si ati zinatupatia pesa sana, zinakuanga za mchanga, lakini mainly our cash cow is onion. So we are laying the drip lines, and then next we are going to plant the onions, transplant the onions, and we are going to show you how we increase the population of that. So if it has not rained and you need to transplant your onions, so you have to irrigate the bed. So what I'm doing here is I'm just opening the pipe, the main pipe. That is a sound of pressure. It's a sound that every farmer loves. Pressure ya maji inakuja shambani. So now what you notice here, like at this point, this is a small leakage we have. So this is fixed. You see, we are trying to have 2 beds. Tunajaribu kushikanisha 2 drip lines. Tunataka kupanda kitunguu yetu kwa hizi beds, but we have to wait a little bit for them to be wet, because as I mentioned, onion is a game of numbers. The more you put in, the more you get. So once you are able to irrigate your system, and why I always prefer a drip irrigation is, for instance, hii shamba as big as it is, we can manage irrigation when you're just 2 people. But if I'm using other systems, itabidi nimeongeza watu shambani, which will increase my cost of production. I have gotten these onions from the nursery. So once I have my onions, it is advised unazikata huku juu. You trim them like this. For some people, you trim a week before, which is a part of hardening off. Alternatively, you can just trim it as you plant it. So this is what I am going to plant. This is my onion seedlings. You can look at them. When I am transplanting these seedlings, because I want to maximize on my plant population, this is how I am going to plant them. Hii ndio tunaita spacing ya kitunguu using drip lines. As I mentioned earlier, drip line yangu from one drip hole to the next is 15 centimeters. So kwa hizi vitunguu, depending with who you're selling your onions to. Okay, so if you're selling to mama mboga ile kitunguu ndogo, you can plant 6, even 7 at this space. If you're planning to target supermarkets, you space them bigger. So I will start, if you're targeting to have the very big onions, so you plant one on this side, and you plant the other one on this side. If you want the big ones, you put one in the middle, like that. And then you can just go back to putting the rest. Unapanda hapa, alafu unaendelea kupanda hapo. Hiyo ni spacing number 1. We call this zigzag spacing. If you want to plant more onions in the same space, unapanda hapa kando. This is what we call double spacing. Sababu unapanda 2 sides of that shimo. So you plant on this side, and then you come and plant in the middle. So that's giving us a spacing of 7.5. You plant on this side as well. and then again on the whole you get this. Remember, all this is going to affect our plant population and the sizes of the bulbs that we are going to get at the end of the day. So ukipanda kitunguu chako hivyo, if you notice one thing, nikipanda natumia 1 knuckle of my finger. That is the depth of planting you should use. If you plant deeper, kitunguu yako itakuwa na shida wakati wa bulbing. Inapatikana kitunguu tunaita chupa, but if you plant it this way, if you plant your onion, inafaa kukani kama imeanguka. Alafu by day 3 inaanzanga kurudi straight. Alafu by day 7 you have new leaves forming. So yeah, that is how you plant your onions, depending on the spacing of the place you're taking your onions. Also irrigation on the water available. Sababu unaweza panda hizi za katikati, as I'm saying, in between the 15 centimeters, you can plant in between, and then if you do not have enough water to irrigate this plant, all these onions are going to dry up. So this is how you plant your onions. When using 3 or 4 drip lines, you can be able to work with a population that is going to enable you to get yield. And most importantly, when you look at the feeding, kitunguu yako ndio utaweza kutoa kilo. You look at the variety that you're going to plant. Most importantly, how do you feed it and how do you irrigate your soil? So there's a question that comes up a lot of at what step should I irrigate my crop once again? So I'm just going to show you with some, okay, if you see your soil like this, if you get this consistency, the soil is still wet and you can go 1 more day without planting, without irrigating. But if you get it like this, it's cracking up, it means your soil, your onion is not getting adequate water. Remember, the onion does not have a deep planting rooting depth. So maji yote ya kitunguu iko hapa juu, the root zone is on top. So when you're trying to find out if you should irrigate, this consistency is okay, but when you go to this and you find it like that, it means it's time to irrigate your crop. So this is where we begin, and then we use the soil test result that we've gotten to enable us to feed our onion correctly. Irrigate your onion to ensure that the onion is irrigated. We usually say give or take 40,000 liters per acre per week to get the maximum yield. Hii ni seedling. Wakati uko na mbegu, when you plant your mbegu, depending on location again, the onions takes about 6 weeks to 7 weeks to get ready for transplanting. There's some people who prefer thicker stems when planting, some prefer thinner stems. So again, you can transplant your onion anytime from week 5 to up to week 8, depending on the size of the stem that you would prefer when transplanting your onions. After this, hii kitunguu ikiwa hivi ndio ikuje ikuwe kitunguu tunauza sokoni, it's going to take us another 3 months where we are going to be feeding, taking care of the pests and the weeds. When you transplant your onions, factor number 1, water. We need to irrigate our onions on a daily basis after we transplant for the first 1 week. If we don't get that, we get high mortality. Another one, there's some people who prefer thicker stems, some prefer thinner stems. Thinner stems tend to translate really fast into the onion seedlings, but some prefer the thicker stems. So you might find that your nursery is dying up. Sometimes from the seed to the seedling, you might find you're losing a lot. And that's why we call experts like us to help you in nursery establishment, maybe purchasing seedlings, irrigation system, and much more. Even agronomists to come and help you through some of these processes to minimize the losses. Remember, I said this is commercial production, so we really need to know what our soil is saying. After you've gotten your soil test results, ikikwambia week 1 weka NPK, week 1 weka DAP, do this and that, that is what you do to the soil, and you follow that to the latter until you harvest. That way, you're able to produce onion optimally. After hii kitunguu ikiwa hivi tumetransplant, the next phase, this is now taking care of this onion for another 12 weeks, which is 3 months, to enable us to have the final yield. So after this, we will water. We are going to do the pesticides, the herbicides, not herbicides, sorry, the pesticides, the fungicide, and the foliars, and also the basal fertilizers until we are able to harvest our onions in 3 months' time.